Hi, welcome back. My name's Annie, and today we're going to cover the supply chain snapshot functionality in NetSuite. The supply chain snapshot allows companies that track their inventory. There are a lot of records that have been covered in additional super training videos like purchasing, selling, transferring inventory, and it's really helpful in NetSuite to have a tool that helps you understand what your inventory levels will be once you process these transactions. So let's say you sell home goods. You want to make sure that when you're purchasing your inventory, you maintain an accurate level before you fulfill it out to the client. So if you're purchasing desks, you need to make sure that you're purchasing enough desks so that you can fulfill those out at a later date to your customers. So let's jump into it. Here I am on the home dashboard. I'm going to start by navigating to our item record. So here we're looking at an inventory item. We're going to be talking about the desk example that we talked about at the beginning of this video. You can see at the very top of our screen, we can see our supply chain snapshot, and this is the main functionality we'll be going through today. Now, before jumping into this record directly, there are a few fields that I wanted to show on the item record itself. Now, there's a lot of information shown on this record that can be referenced in the other super training videos, but I'm really going to be focusing on one field in particular called the supply chain future horizon. So when we're talking about supply chain management in NetSuite, we could be talking about a lot of different forecasts. We could be talking about 3 months, we could be talking about 6 months, we could be talking about 2 years. Now, that's potentially a lot of data in the system, so we can utilize the supply chain future horizon to tell the system, hey, I only want to look at the next 120 days in this instance. Scrolling back up to our supply chain snapshot, if I click into this record, you'll see it brings up the supply chain snapshot record in the system directly related to this particular item in NetSuite. Now, thinking about the 120 days that I referenced on the item record, we can see that the system gives us a past horizon date and a future horizon date. The future horizon date goes out the 120 days. We're telling the system we don't want to look too far in the future. We don't need a year's worth of data, but we want to see the really critical points of our inventory movements within the next 120 days. The system also looks historically in the past, so we can set a default past horizon date, say, let's include the last 30 days worth of transactions just in case I have a late purchase order, a late shipment, or anything that will still impact inventory throughout that time. Now, jumping into the details of the snapshot itself. These are all related to the same desk item that we've been talking about throughout this video. So taking a look at some of the sublist details that NetSuite calculates for you, the first important piece of information when looking at your inventory forecasting is what is my current inventory? So NetSuite starts off by displaying your current inventory at a particular location. Below, it also adds in any additional transaction that is going to offset inventory today or in any future date within our time frame. You'll see here there's a supply quantity and a demand quantity at the top of our sublist. The supply quantity is anything that's going to increase inventory in the system. That may be a purchase order receiving these inventory items into the system. This might be an incoming transfer order. And similarly, we have our demand quantity. This is anything removing that inventory from the system. This may be work orders if you process production in NetSuite. This may be a transfer order fulfilled to a separate location, or this may be a sales order fulfilling the inventory to a customer. Now, most importantly, you'll see this inventory balance column. This calculates exactly what your inventory balance will be as we move on throughout these transactions. So you can see we start with a quantity of 40 with our current inventory. We have a transfer order for an additional 40 units, bringing our inventory balance up to 80. And then we have 2 sales orders that's pulling that inventory, bringing our inventory balance down to 36. Now, you may be asking yourself, why does this help me in the system? The fact is, this gives you what that forecast of inventory will be with your current transactions. So this is a really helpful tool to be utilized with MRP and other supply chain management features in NetSuite, as this can really help identify why the system is telling you to either purchase or sell additional items. and give you the details behind your inventory forecast. Scrolling to the top of my screen, you'll see that there is this blue refresh button at the very top. You can manually refresh your supply chain snapshot, but it's encouraged to use the supply chain snapshot schedule to refresh all of these records. You may imagine that you will have a lot of different supply chain snapshot records in the system, depending on the amount of items that you have throughout your NetSuite environment. An easy way to make sure that they're all refreshing at either a daily, a weekly, and hourly cadence is to set up a supply chain snapshot schedule in NetSuite. So I'm going to navigate up to Lists, to Supply Chain, and all the way down to Supply Chain Snapshot Schedules. Now, it's very common to only have one schedule to refresh all of your items at a single point in time. Clicking into the schedule, you can see the different options you have and how these supply chain snapshots are refreshed. To start, you have a Save Search referenced here, so you can make sure you are only refreshing the items that you intend to look at your inventory forecast for. So if you have inactive items in the system or some that are very slow moving throughout your inventory, this would be a great opportunity to potentially have those not run through a supply chain snapshot or run at a less frequent cadence. In addition, you set the frequency in which you'd like these snapshots to refresh. The default and most often used is daily. Now, sometimes companies would like to run this a few times a day. You can create multiple schedules and simply update the next time you'd like this to run. So if you would like it updated at the very beginning of the day, say at 8 a.m., and then towards the end of the day at 3 p.m., you can set two different schedules in the system, set the next time, and let them run continuously through the day. Keep in mind, you can always refresh that supply chain snapshot manually, as I showed earlier, to make sure that if you do process changes on an item, you can see exactly how that influences your inventory forecasting. So far, we've only been looking at a single item and one supply chain snapshot, but often you may be looking to view your inventory forecasting in bulk and see for all of your items, do you have any forecasted shortages? Using supply chain snapshots, it's really easy to build reports so you can get a more accurate view into your inventory forecasting. Now, in my second tab, I'm going to navigate to our inventory supply save search in NetSuite. Now, this information should look familiar based on what we looked at in our items supply chain snapshot. This gives it a bit more of an accessible view and allows you to view your items in bulk. I'm currently filtered on our individual item, but if I go ahead and remove and look at all of our items in the system, you'll be able to see how you can view your inventory forecasting on a larger scale. Now, it is common to filter these based on location, so we are simply looking at New Jersey in this instance, but you can switch back and forth between locations if you do track inventory in multiple locations. Taking a look at this report, you'll see a lot of different information portrayed. So unpacking a few of the important details on the save search, I wanted to start with our demand quantity. So going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the video, our demand quantity is anything that's decreasing inventory throughout the system. So it may be work orders pulling inventory, sales orders fulfilling inventory, transfer orders pulling inventory from stock. And your supply quantity is going to be anything incoming to your warehouse that may be incoming transfer orders or incoming purchase orders. Then, of course, our inventory balance on the right, calculating what our inventory will be once we hit the date when these transactions will be processed. We also do provide reference to the units. So if you do purchase, stock, and sell in different units of measure, the system will calculate all of this detail based on the primary stock unit selected on the item record. So filtering on a different item, you may notice that once we filtered on this item, we get a red line at the bottom of our report. So looking through a few of the details shown here for this particular item, in the blue, we have our current inventory at our New Jersey location. We then have a handful of transactions that is pulling our inventory from the system. This is resulting in 47.7 pounds left in NetSuite. The system has an additional requirement for 1,000 more pounds, which we do not have in stock, nor do we have an incoming purchase or transfer order to satisfy this demand. The system then portrays this line in red since our inventory balance is forecasted at a negative value. This can be really helpful in the visibility into your future inventory and aid in your purchasing requirements and making decisions on how much inventory to hold within your warehouse. Now, looking outside of just the inventory balance, on the left-hand side of this report are the dates. So we can see that on March 12th, that is when my inventory is projected to go below zero. So just another reason how this can help with MRP and additional functionality within the system. Now, to get as much value as we can out of our supply chain snapshot functionality, we don't want to run into a situation where we're gathering incorrect information. So it's really important to keep in mind to keep accuracy in your ship dates and your receipt dates throughout the system. And that's it for supply chain snapshot. Thank you for joining us today.